Nick here, and welcome back to my Flash episode review. My thoughts on tonight's episode of Flash, titled Magenta. And I have to apologize for this video being as late as it is. It's late for a couple of reasons. One, unfortunately, I had work while the show was airing, so I had no way of watching it live to give this video to you guys at a decent time. And also, I found out after I came home from work that a family member of mine that's really close to me was just diagnosed with cancer. So I'm not gonna let that I'm not gonna make this video about that, but you guys are gonna notice I'm not gonna be like myself in this video. As you guys can already tell, I'm not at 100% right now. I'm not in the best mental state, but I care enough about the shows I love, and I feel like it's good to kind of do something healthy and positive with my time while all this is going on. So I'm still going to get this video to you guys while I still have the energy to, and I'm just gonna do my best to kind of get through this and not trying to be a Debbie Downer. And I'm not trying to avoid the issue, but I just want to let you guys know, because I feel like for you, those of you guys who watch my videos, I think it's fair that you guys know why. First of all, why the video is late, and also why I'm not at 100% tonight. So, with that out of the way, my thoughts on the episode. Honestly, I really liked this episode. I didn't think it was as strong of an episode I thought last week's was, but I think in terms of, even though this week was a villain of the week, I thought the actress who played Magenta, Joey King, who she's been in a bunch of different movies and stuff. She actually played a young Talia al Ghul in The Dark Knight Rises. She's been on a bunch of different movies. She was in The Conjuring and stuff like that. And she's a really talented young actress. And I have to give her credit, because in this episode, I really felt that, while the Magenta aspect of the character was a little over the top at times, that was more of the writing and the portrayal of Magenta in the way that they wanted her to come off. While Joey King just playing Frankie, I thought was really human and down to earth. And I felt like they were dealing with issues, like domestic abuse, and that's really not something that The Flash has really touched on, at least as far as I can remember. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic to bring into a villain of the week, who wasn't necessarily a villain, who was kind of, manipulated to being, the Magenta that was apparently in Flashpoint. And seeing, Frank having to deal with that with almost the split personality, I like seeing that, especially in a villain of the week, where it could have just been any sort of throwaway villain to bring in Jesse Quick. But I like that they brought in a good enough actress in Joey King, and the character itself, while again the Magenta part came out over the top at times, I like the portrayal by Joey King, and I thought she did a phenomenal job in this episode. Also, I liked the way that we saw the use of speed in this episode, because obviously it's almost like a speed-centric episode, because we have, Jesse Quick and Wells returning from Earth 2, and obviously one of the first things they notice is that, that things are different in this timeline with the Speed Lab, which obviously, Barry didn't know about, Wells and Jesse didn't know about it because they were on Earth 2, and, Jesse and Wells come back, and, Jesse's finally a speedster, and I'm really excited to see that. Obviously, since she's finally starting to become Jesse Quick from the comics. Not exactly like Jesse Quick, because Jesse Quick, there was no Harrison Wells in the original comics, so there was that's based on their own creation, but I'm still excited to see Jesse Quick nonetheless, because obviously Jesse was one of the better characters in season 2, whereas, her relationship with Dr. Wells, it did seem a little bit repetitive with them arguing so much about him trying to control her, and you would think that Wells would ultimately learn his lesson. But, that seems to not be the case with tonight's episode. But, I thought it was interesting bringing in a version of Wells, especially when they introduced the idea of Earth 2, that the other Harrison Wells had a daughter, and that she would become Jesse Quick. I thought that brought an interesting dynamic to the show. And, Violet Bean, I think is her name. I think she's done an amazing job as Jesse, and I love her chemistry with Wally. And Wally in this episode, he was kind of taken aback when he found out, that Jesse is now a speedster, since they were both affected by the dark matter explosion at the same exact time, and she got her powers, and Wally hasn't yet. And we all know by now Wally's gonna get his powers and he's gonna become Kid Flash again, or at least in this timeline. And it's cool seeing them they're like quickly, you know, building up to that. And I think by the mid-season finale, we're gonna see Wally with his powers. I think that's ultimately what we're gonna be building up to by that point in the season. And then the rest of the season can be focused on, you know, taking down whoever Alchemy is. And I hope Alchemy isn't some, you know, character that we've come to know already. You know, I just want them to create a new, unique villain that isn't just a carbon copy of the speedster villains that we've had in the past. You know, I don't know, but like I said, you know, I thought this was a really good episode from the scenes between, you know, Joe and Wally, seeing Barry and Iris on their, you know, their actual first date, and that's really exciting to see as a, you know, as someone who is a West Allen fan and who's been wanting to see them together for a really long time now, and just seeing how their chemistry is so great. You know, Candace Patton and Grant Gustin, one of my favorite aspects of the show, bar none, because it's not like, it's not over the top hokey romance. It doesn't feel forced. It feels very natural. Like this romance is earned. Where unlike, you know, with Arrow and Olicity and that whole thing, I don't know. But and it's maybe just to finally kind of end my thoughts on this. From the villain to Jesse Quick to the date to pretty much everything about this episode, between, you know, trying to get everyone to convince Jesse not to be a superhero, and then Wally's frustration with not having his powers yet, and him trying to get his powers by jumping in front of the car and stuff like that. All the moving parts of this episode I thought worked really, really well. From especially, you know, like the heartfelt scenes between all the characters, you know, and Barry confronting Wally, and, you know, and the one of my favorite scenes was the final scene where Wells was kind of telling Jesse, you know, they could stay, and he gave her his approval of her being a hero, and rewarded her with a new super suit, which you can kind of see behind me, and it looks very much so like the trajectory suit, you know, from the villain trajectory who's that one-off villain last season, where they found out she was addicted to Velocity 9 and stuff like that. But overall, again, I really, really enjoyed this episode. Not the best episode in it by any means, but it was enjoyable. It had a good story, had a good villain who wasn't just one note, and it wasn't just a villain of the week. Had enough in there, and just Jesse Quick, I'm just so excited to see what they do with her moving forward, and with Wally West, and seeing how many more metas are coming back for Flashpoint. And I think next week's episode is we're getting the return of Wentworth Miller as Captain Cold, and because of Flashpoint, more than likely he's going to be coming back, and I want to see how that's gonna change things, especially since, you know, everything that happened with his character on Legends of Tomorrow. I'm just really excited for this season of DC TV between Supergirl and Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. Okay, so for those of you who have asked me to, you know, watch Arrow again because they're saying, oh, the season's back to season 1, hold on a second. I watched the first episode. It was okay. I got through half of the second. I got kind of bored of it. But that being, I'm probably gonna end up finishing it. I'm like I told someone, I'm gonna give the show until the mid-season finale. If it's good by that point, I'll start watching it consistently again, and maybe I'll start reviewing it again. But just because the first episode was good or decent, doesn't mean that the show's back to season 1 quality, because frankly, it's not. Just because he's back to killing and there's darker themes in there does not mean that it's back to season 1 by any means. I'm not gonna give that show that quick of a pass like so many people seem to be giving it. They treated one of my favorite characters in the show like garbage, and I'm not gonna fall for that again. So I'm willing to give the show one final shot of, you know, prove me wrong. You know, I want to see if it's gonna be a good show again. But, you know, just for those of you who want to know if I was going to be watching or reviewing Arrow again. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on tonight's episode of Flash. What did you guys think of this episode? Did you guys like it? Did you guys, what were your guys' thoughts on it? Sound your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I promise you guys, this is going to be the only video where you guys are going to see me being a Debbie Downer and being this late. Especially with my superhero reviews. Star Wars Rebels, that's another story because that's a weekend show. But, so yeah, if you guys want to subscribe to my channel for all the different show reviews I do, from the movie reviews, trailer reviews, and all the other kind of videos I do that are all up on my channel. So that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys for watching and, you know, bearing with me while I go through this hard time in my life. But, just if you guys just go out and support my videos and, you know, just kind of, you know, tell me your thoughts and just allow this community to be a positive place for people to come and talk to each other about the shows that we all love. So once again, guys, you know, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.